Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I still see some people are joining. It's really nice to see all of you joining us for another HR Masterclass today. And as people are still coming in, I'd like to do a little introduction. So for those of you who don't know OpenUp, let me quickly introduce myself and the business. So my name is Gabby, and I'm a learning specialist here at OpenUp. And I joined the company to help develop our mission to remove barriers to mental well-being and to also make mental well-being accessible to all. And with our platform, we offer support for the mental well-being of employees in more than 1,500 companies. For example, through one-on-one sessions, group sessions, masterclasses, and other helpful learning opportunities on the topic. We also know the importance of supporting organizations through their HR and leadership teams so that people like you can have a meaningful impact on your teams. And that's why we are regularly hosting exciting sessions like this HR Masterclass today. So what can you expect today? We will talk about the topic of enabling managers for workplace well-being, and we will also have a time for a Q&A at the end of the session, so Geraldine can answer some of your questions directly. So if you would like to ask a question, please do so in the questions tab, which you can find at the bottom right corner of your screen. And this way, as you input the question, other participants can also upvote the questions, and the most popular questions will get answered at the end. Now, our speaker for today is Geraldine, who is a head of learning here at OpenUp. And I'd like to remind you that this is also an interactive session, so feel free to interact with each other in the chat, or you can also use emojis for reactions. And for now, I hope you enjoyed this session. And Geraldine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gabby. Well, good afternoon, all of you, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me in this masterclass about enabling managers for workplace mental well-being. But before we dive in, let me introduce myself and my journey. So I'm Geraldine, as Gabby mentioned, and I'm head of learning at OpenUp, where I'm responsible for our courses, masterclasses, and group sessions. Before OpenUp, I held roles in learning and development and operations at tech companies such as Apple, Uber, and Lapaya. My journey actually started in learning and development 12 years ago. Then I deepened my knowledge in L&D during 5 years at Uber, supporting the operations department. And more recently, I was lucky to be able to combine both operations and learning and development at Lapaya. And I'm currently at OpenUp. For the past 10 years, I've had the privilege of managing teams. And what I enjoy most is the diversity in terms of interaction, engagement, and the uniqueness that each team member brings to the table. And for me personally, the most fulfilling thing is to see them grow, learn, and to know that I, as their manager, play such a big part in their development and mental well-being. That's why I'm super happy to be here and talk about how you can enable your managers to normalize mental well-being. But before we dive into it, it's important to get some context. So let's zoom out for a moment and take a look at what is going on right now. Have you heard about VUCA? So it's originally developed by the US Army War College. VUCA describes the challenging and unpredictable conditions we're facing today. So volatility refers to rapid and unpredictable changes. To manage this, companies must be agile and ready to adapt quickly to market shifts. Then uncertainty is actually the lack of clarity about the present and the future. Businesses need robust forecasting and flexible strategies to mitigate risk and navigate this uncertainty effectively. Then complexity involves multiple interconnected factors and variables in decision-making. Simplifying processes and enhancing communication can help manage complexity, along with utilizing data analysis and systems thinking. And ambiguity is a lack of clarity about the meaning of events. Companies should foster a culture of continuous learning and adaptability, encouraging innovative thinking and clear, concise communication. But what does it mean, right? Macro trends are directly impacting our well-being and in turn our work performance. The world is constantly changing. Events such as COVID impacted people's ability to connect, And then recession and inflation are influencing people's self-confidence and levels of stress and anxiety. And more recently, with the rise of AI, we've all heard a lot about it, we see that people feel threatened and it decreases their self-confidence. So these are just some examples of external events outside of our control that have an impact on our mental well-being. And that's not even taking into account personal situations that your team members might be going through. Then when we look at the volume and pace, the volume and pace of change is overwhelming for employees, as change are not only stacked, they're also continuous. So for example, an employee who just came back from parental leave, firstly has to catch up with everything they missed, finds out that their manager has changed, hears in an all hands that the company is not performing as expected, and that there are talks of restructuring. On top of that, at every other meeting, this person hears about using more AI. And let's not forget that this is a new parent. Does this sound familiar? I'm pretty sure it does. And they're experiencing change fatigue, and this impacts their intent to stay, trust levels, engagement, and performance. But it's not just the employees impacted. For managers, the game has changed too. They have more responsibilities than they can manage. They find it difficult to build relationships, but more concerningly, nearly 75% of them don't feel equipped to drive the expected change for their employees' needs. So with this context, let's see why it's important to engage your managers in mental well-being. Let's start off with a quick poll. So you can vote and see the results in the polls tab at the bottom right. But according to employees, who impacts their mental well-being the most? I see some results coming in. Quite a lot of you think their manager, also a small percentage their partner. Interesting. We'll give it a couple more seconds and then I'll reveal. All right, so it's actually their partner. And in a Gartner research, nearly 70% of employees say that their managers affect their mental health as much as their partner, and even more than their therapist or doctor. Concurring with this statement, 90% of HR leaders say that their future success requires managers to operate in a more humane way. So I think it's pretty clear that managers are key players for workplace resilience and well-being, but that's not the full picture. So several publications and OpenUp's own surveys show that today's managers are facing a variety of challenges with their teams. Challenges such as starting meaningful conversations, dealing with different generations, preventing burnout, navigating organizational changes, giving feedback, and supporting team members coping with personal hardships. And if we look at OpenUp's most popular group sessions, we see that these challenges of managers are well represented here as well. For example, with number 4 and 5, right? So transforming conversations, the art of listening, and how to have meaningful conversations about mental well-being. It's also about empowering managers to strengthen their own mental well-being. Deloitte and Gartner have conducted research and found that more than 50% of managers are suffering from work-induced stress and fatigue, and that nearly 65% have considered quitting for a job that would better support their well-being. I know it sounds a bit gloomy, but there's a lot that you can do to engage your managers in mental well-being. So why don't we talk about how? Before we do that, maybe another quick check, and you can provide your answer in the chat. What are the most common barriers that you hear from managers to engage in mental well-being? Let's have a look. So what are the most common barriers that you hear from your managers to engage in mental well-being? Yeah, thanks, Alexandra. So fear of not knowing what to do, lack of understanding, time. Time again, I see a lot of time, unsure how to start a conversation. We hear that a lot. Lack of understanding the Dutch health system, workload, time. Yeah, not being a priority for sure. We often hear that managers, feel in the middle where they do care, but they also want to focus on getting results. Lack of resources, yeah. So the not knowing, um, lack of empathy, not enough time, lack of training. Indeed, these are actually the most common ones. And let's have a look at the most common barriers that we hear a lot. Here you can see the three main types, and it's actually quite similar to what you guys have shared in chat. So I think the first one is around um, lacking the sense of urgency, so it not being a priority, or insecurity, not knowing how to tackle it, but also fear, right? So think about a new manager or a new employee that joins the company, really wanting to perform well and focus on the business, and therefore doesn't want to be perceived as weak. And this is obviously not an exhaustive list, right? Look at what you're all sharing in chat at the moment. So with these common barriers in mind, we've actually defined 5 things that you can do in your organization to help. So I'll dive into each one of those. Let's get started. So the first one is actually cultivating a supportive culture. So what you want to do is actually seek out for mental well-being ambassadors and leverage them to support your efforts. So you might know people in the teams that find mental well-being super important. They might talk about it a lot. So get them on board, right? Make them ambassadors, but also drive conversations around mental well-being in your organization. So, for example, March is a really big month that you can leverage for awareness activities. It's both Stress Awareness Month and Sleep Awareness Month. So maybe by using the reaction button and show me a thumbs up if you actually organize something at your company related to one of these events. Anyone? Nice. I see some thumbs up. Good, good. Yeah, perhaps you can also share in chat what you guys did to inspire others on the call. And for all of you, those that didn't, raise your thumb, don't worry, you actually get another chance in October, because World Mental Health Day is on October 10th. So just make sure to mark it in your calendar, and organize something around that day. You can also encourage managers to build and join external or internal peer groups, where they can learn and connect with others. Think about ERGs, right? Employee resource groups, or perhaps learning circles, but also keep it closer. So consider foundational policies, for example, stating in your code of conduct or employee handbook the process on how to reach out for support. Let your employees also be aware that they're encouraged to speak up if they're concerned. And it doesn't even have to be super big. It could be as simple as making sure that it's mentioned during the new hire onboarding. Then secondly, train your managers, support them in their personal development and help them build that confidence. So, for example, promote masterclasses around mental well-being topics, or share courses that they can complete. Specifically train them in skills like active listening, conducting difficult conversations, providing meaningful feedback, stuff like that, so that they really feel equipped. And creating a space for people to share and empathetic listening obviously goes a long way. Then you want to equip your managers with the right support tools, right? Invest in mental well-being solutions that are accessible for everyone in the company. Avoid solutions that are made exclusive to certain teams. So I've seen examples of managers who really care about their teams and look for a solution for their team only. Although this comes from a good place, you really want to ensure that all of your employees are benefiting from the best support. So I definitely encourage a company-wide solution rather than leaving it in the hands of your managers and ending up with an inconsistent offering for your employees. also from a fairness perspective. And help your managers understand what's available in terms of employee support so that they know what they can offer to their team members in times of need. And then you want to guide your managers as well. Make them feel comfortable and safe in the decisions and actions that they take when they take them. And you need to be the main ambassador. Then also promote self-care. So share success stories, show how important it is, encourage leaders to lead by example, by opening up, showing vulnerability, and normalize mental well-being in the workplace. And then finally, measure and share the impact, right? Make sure to collect data and insights to demonstrate the organizational impact. We all love KPIs, so set KPIs around mental well-being and track satisfaction, but also get feedback. Get feedback regularly for all your efforts and tactics that you have been implementing. Understand what works and what doesn't will for sure help you shape your offering. So let's do a little bit of a deep dive here to make it a little bit more tangible with an example. So let's see how managers can be empowered by OpenUp. And here's the example that I've prepared for you today. So meet John. He works at a mid-sized tech company and recently got promoted and now leads a team. Yay. Due to new responsibilities, he's experiencing high levels of stress. And on top of that, one of his team members is showing signs of burnout. As you can imagine, he feels overwhelmed, right? And he's unsure of how to support his team best, especially with their hybrid setup. So if we were to summarize, we could say that his key challenges are firstly, managing his own stress, then initiating meaningful conversations about mental well-being, and lastly, providing the right support to remote team members. Obviously, there are various ways to deal with his challenges, but as I'm best equipped to share what OpenUp has to offer, let's use OpenUp as an example. So with access to OpenUp, John is actually equipped with tools and resources to tackle his key challenges. And we've even made it easier for people like John, so managers. We have created a dedicated page just for managers where they can find all the relevant content. Let's take a brief look at what that looks like. So John has an important role as a manager, and it's essential that he looks after his own personal well-being. We offer a wide variety of content, and depending on what his preference is and how much time he has, he could follow our guided mindfulness exercises. He can read up on relevant topics at his own pace through articles or starting a course. And he obviously can also schedule a one-on-one consultation with one of our certified psychologists or lifestyle experts. Then next to that, we also offer manager-specific courses on various topics. Our aim is essentially to educate your managers on the most common topics around workplace mental well-being. But if you prefer, if you're more of an auditory learner and you like to listen and be inspired, we also offer masterclasses where you can hear from industry experts or learn from professors. So I personally really enjoy the masterclasses as they provide practical tips and interesting facts. So one of our recent masterclasses was around the psychology of performance. And that's where I learned that distraction is 15 times more costly than health-related absenteeism in the workplace. Mind-blowing. We also offer group sessions. So these are 75-minute sessions where you can connect and learn from peers. You can practice and gain confidence and sharpen your skills and feel better equipped to lead. And through our platform, you'll obviously get access to professional help. So if you want to book a session, that's possible, where you can then dive deeper into specific issues. You can bring a case that you can discuss, and we can help you out with that. And I mentioned that managers play a key role, right? And that's something that I would like to emphasize again, and particularly their role in building psychological safety. So this is actually a concept that I would like to double click on. So in 1999, Dr. Amy Edmondson was studying clinical teams and the number of mistakes that different teams made. So actually during her research, she was quite surprised to find that the teams with a higher number of good outcomes actually made more mistakes than teams with fewer good outcomes. So quite a surprising result, but after further investigation, she discovered that in fact those teams with better outcomes were admitting more mistakes, whilst the teams with fewer good outcomes were more likely to hide theirs. So as a result, Dr. Edmondson codified the concept of psychological safety, namely the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. So it's all about creating an environment where people feel comfortable admitting mistakes. In other words, being vulnerable, where they can learn from failure, an environment where everybody openly shares ideas, and that results in better innovation and decision-making. So now that we've talked about the why and how, let's see what the benefits are for organizations. So with the right implementation of proactive and preventive solutions, every euro invested yields a minimum return of 6. So presenteeism is attending work while having mental well-being challenges. So this costs on average 4,660 euros per employee per year. And this is obviously because somebody's working while having mental well-being challenges, which results in a drop in productivity because the employee is simply not fully there, right? And when we look at absence due to mental well-being costs around 1,500 to 2,000 euros per employee per year, and 1.5 to 2 times the salary per employee as cost of employee turnover. So did I already mention that managers play a key role in the mental well-being of their teams? According to Gallup, 70% of variance in team engagement is determined solely by the manager, right? And at OpenUp, we support both managers and their teams. So before wrapping up, I would actually like to share some results from our impact report. So around 870 OpenUp users responded to a total of 16 questions regarding various aspects of well-being levels. 83% of employees reported recovery or improvement in their well-being challenges. A similar percentage felt more capable of handling future mental well-being challenges, and nearly 75% experienced increased work productivity and improved performance. And finally, here are just some testimonials from our impacts from our clients. I think one that I'd like to quote is the one from Picnic that you can see at the bottom right, because it summarizes very well the importance of mental well-being, right? So in the end, if you care about your people, they will feel energized, engaged, and motivated. We're here for the employee well-being of over 1,500 organizations, and we're on a mission to make mental well-being accessible for all. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that you have a better idea of how you can empower your managers to build resilient teams.
Yes, thank you, Geraldine, for this really insightful session. It's also really nice to see from everyone the interaction and really interacting with what you were saying as well. And as we mentioned in the beginning, if you have any questions for Geraldine, please put them in the questions tab. And before we get some questions rolling, I actually had a question myself, if that's okay, Geraldine.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a bit of a two-part question. So the first question would be, as a manager, how do you deal with a team member that is visibly struggling? And also in regards to that, what tools does OpenUp offer in terms of support?
Yeah, I think just take the time to talk and listen, right? Find out what that team member is struggling with, but also try to understand and hear from them what they need, right? We can make assumptions and think we know what the right solution might be, but really engage in the conversation with them. And I think, depending on what the issue is, there are obviously many solutions that OpenUp offers. So perhaps the individual struggling with stress or high workload, what we hear a lot nowadays, right? He or she could obviously join one of our group sessions on setting boundaries, or perhaps coping with worries, how to ease your mind, or follow one of our many mindfulness exercises or guided meditation. So I think it's really about understanding what they're struggling with, and then exploring the platform and see what would be suitable for the individual. I think it's important as a manager to understand what would work for the employee, right?
Yeah, indeed, it's quite personal, and it's in a way, like you're saying, it's not like a one size fits all.
No, exactly. Yeah. And
Oh,
hopefully you've already established that rapport with your team members. So you already kind of know, Gabby's going to benefit more from a group session where she can actually get ideas from others, but also practice. I think it's really about catering the solution as well.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, great. And also, I'm just wondering now, because we saw a lot of participants putting in, different reasons why it might be hard to prioritize, talking about mental well-being, or maybe it's like lack of time, or just overall not taking it as urgent, as you were mentioning. So it can be challenging for HR teams to, of course, ensure that managers invest time in their team's well-being and also their own well-being. And I was wondering what would be possible strategies to deal with this?
Good question. Yeah, I think there's actually a lot that you can do. And also depending on the maturity in terms of, what your offering already is, and of the organization, what stage you're at. But, a couple things come to mind. Leadership trainings, right? So you can provide specific training for managers that are focused on well-being. It could be trainings around mindfulness, stress management, how to recognize burnout symptoms, stuff like that. But you can also think about having a dedicated well-being policy, right? So where you clearly make it visible that it's important that well-being is taken seriously, and that there's actually a policy around it. I think more tangibly, you could weave it into check-in moments or evaluation moments. I do that as well with my team, where we start off with, your mood, your motivation, and your workload. So basically, conducting a quick well-being check-in, like how's everybody feeling? I think this also allows managers to engage actively in their team members' well-being. And if it's recurring, people know, that it's important. So it becomes something that is just the standard. You could also do team building events, right? You could do a breathing exercise with the team. You could do yoga sessions, or maybe, group lunches could also be fun, where you just talk and connect with each other. But also for managers, it's important that they need to take care of their well-being as well, right? So, remind them to take regular breaks, but stick to a healthy work-life balance as well. Obviously, everybody has their personal life and maybe different working rhythms. Use features such as scheduled emails. So if you prefer to still look at your email after, you walk the dog or you put your kid down to sleep, don't expect a response from your team when you're emailing them at 8, but rather schedule it to be sent out in the morning, right? Because otherwise they might feel the pressure to respond immediately. So
Yeah.
think about those kind of things. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, that's a lot of nice strategies. And about the check-in moments as well, like you're saying, checking in with your team first thing in the meeting. How's everyone feeling? I can definitely second that to everybody because I am in Geraldine's team. And indeed, we do that in the beginning of every meeting. And it's really, really helpful as well. So I'm seeing right now there are some questions that have come in. So there's a question from Rita. As HR, we want to introduce short sessions for managers on feedback, well-being, and other topics. These sessions should be practical and constructive with case studies to help them understand how to resolve issues or what actions they need to take. Do you have any ideas? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a couple. I think when it's around feedback, I think as a company, it's great to align company-wide on a framework that you use so that everybody speaks and, the same feedback language, right?
Yeah.
So from an HR perspective, definitely do some research on what works well and facilitate the training for the entire company and weave it into your performance review. So have a 360 feedback model, make sure that feedback is provided regularly. Yeah, I think that's one on feedback. Let me see. With case, yeah, I think case studies are always a good one, but we often also see that not everybody brings a case to the session. So really emphasize the need of preparation for the training in order to really get the most out of it. So how I like to do it is actually collect submissions prior to the actual session. So really making it mandatory that everybody submits one. You obviously have various ways to do this, but if you have if you do this, you can actually also see who doesn't submit one and reach out to that individual and remind them, right? So yeah.
Nice, thank you. And then we have one more question from Anna as well. What if you have a manager that already did trainings and still lacks empathy and is struggling with active listening? How can we help the manager see that maybe something needs to change? And how can we support the employee? So it sounds like there's a little bit of a blind spot there.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I think that this is more common than we think. And this also makes me think of the Johari window, right? Where you have self-awareness and your blind spot. So this individual is definitely in his or her blind spot. I think the best thing to do is to make them aware of it, because we can't expect somebody to change something that they're not aware of. And although, I think this is a tough one because empathy is such a critical soft skill that is very hard to get better at, right? But with everything, if you practice a lot, you'll get there eventually. So I think first thing is just really, having a straight up conversation saying, listen, we've offered you the necessary training. You should be able to show empathy. You have the theory, you understand why it's important. But we see that you're still struggling, and have that conversation on what do you still need from us? Do you need to practice more? Would you like to read up more about it? I think it's really about understanding what that individual needs, because I don't think that this person is deliberately in this blind spot, right? I think nobody wants to be blind to anything. So let's also assume positive intent here. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're saying, it also sounds that if the manager is not aware of it, maybe the team members might be struggling to bring it up too, because you don't want to make somebody uncomfortable or point out hey, you're not actively, listening to me. So then it's almost like this dance of okay, can I? Are they going to be understanding? But indeed, like you're saying, at the end of the day, these conversations might be a little bit uncomfortable, but they are for the greater good, and hopefully the manager is also quite receptive to the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there are many ways to get this input to him or share this with him or her, right?
Yeah,
You perhaps could, write it down anonymously and put it in a box, and in a team session that
right.
you then share it and pick out the note and read it up, like, because
Yeah.
then,
So it's
yeah,
not so personal, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. But hopefully, you're managing a team, or you're yourself a manager that really values openness,
Hmm.
and that's not necessary, right? I mean, ideally you would like to hear that from the individual. You want to have that relationship with your team members. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Really great questions, Rita and Anna. Thank you for submitting them. And I see right now that we didn't receive any other questions. So I think I'll take it as a sign that we can close off the session. So first of all, I wanted to thank everyone for a really great masterclass together, and for being so interactive. And also thank you, Geraldine, for all the input. Of course, it was really insightful. And throughout the year, we host different masterclasses and roundtables, and we also just launched our own podcast as well. So if you'd like to keep informed about different HR topics and mental well-being topics, my colleague is going to share some links in the chat right now as well. And of course, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to us. We're very happy to talk to you and to connect with you. And we really hope to see you all soon at another HR Masterclass. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.